everyone, I'm Carl Bierock. Welcome back to the Jaguar Football Podcast. And boy, oh boy, Coach, it has been a tremendous week here in Seckman football. Can't wait to get your thoughts about last week's game against Oakville and then looking ahead to this week's homecoming against Pattonville. So good to see you, Coach. How are you
Yeah.
holding up this far into the season?
Hey, we're 5 weeks in and feeling pretty good. I told the boys yesterday, you know, we're one play away in the Parkway West game for being a 5-0 football team. In the same breath, we are 2 plays away from being a 2-3 football team. When you go back to the Fox game and then obviously our game against Oakville. So we're sitting at 4-1. And that's the reality, and we're pretty happy about it. We're in the driver's seat in the conference standings as well as where we want to be in districts, and it's a good day to be a Jaguar.
Absolutely. Well, really, is there any day not to be a? That's a bad day
True.
in the Jaguar
A little
nation.
easier
But
when you're four and
let's
one.
dig into Week 5 because it was
Mhm.
very interesting in your email out to the parents and the other distribution list folks that are on there. You talked about it was a very close game, Oakville Seckman like at least for a little bit of the while there, and then everybody held serve the second half.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about you don't get a lot of 14-10 games anymore. Usually there's a lot of even not even just us, but a lot of teams points being scored across the board. Um, but what you saw is two opponents that are very familiar with each other, right? And we talked about that familiarity leading up to the game. This was our fifth time playing them in 3 seasons, and then obviously the years before that. So we knew it was going to be close. We knew it was going to be tight. We had talked about before, the scores of our previous games, there was that tight window, and we were able to get in there and kind of expose it and kind of really create the separation that you see in the scores. We got in there a little bit in the first half. We just couldn't get all the way through that in the second half and really expose it to score more points. We had opportunities. We had the ball down inside the 10 and didn't score. So there were certainly opportunities to get 3 or 4 touchdowns in the game. And those are things we'll have to capitalize on if we see them again. But it was the game that we expected. And, it was really good. Oakville, we knew, you go into an opponent's house, they're going to come out hot, just like when teams come to the Valley, how we try to play our game. And they came out fast. Big kickoff return, starting on our own 40. We end up stopping them. They kick a field goal, but we rough the kicker. So they elect to get back their offense back on the field. They score on the next play. All that momentum, right? 7-0. And you're thinking, okay, here we go. We need the offense to step up. Well, offense goes out, and we fumble on the second play of the game, right? And then you just feel like that air gets sucked out of the building. Their sidelines all hyped up, kind of shades of the Fox game, right? They're riding high. We're here. At least that's how we felt. But the defense, unfazed, right? They went out there, got a huge stop, and that kind of really set the stage there, for the rest of that half. Especially with the offense scoring on 2 pretty good, well executed drives, and you're going to see that, as we go through the rest of the season. We need that high level of execution if we're going to score. We just can't quite get that firepower to break big plays, so we're going to need 7, 8, 9, 10 play drives, to score points, especially against really good football teams. So, when you defense held serve there right at the end of the half, another great job. I mean, they do a great job with their backs to the end zone. 14-10 going into half, and we liked the position we were in because we were going to be getting the football, and then it just kind of went back and forth, right? Back and forth. Field position, they punt. Field position, we get it better. They kind of do a muff punt. We get it really deep, we don't score. They had an opportunity to score, didn't take it. And then it kind of comes down to, okay, Oakville's got the ball. End of the game, our defense is on the field. Um, and fourth down, 4th and 10, we talk about the scramble drill, right, Carl? We talk about scramble drill. We talk about it. We talk about it. We got a little loose on our scramble drill. Quarterback almost gets sacked. He breaks loose. Guy sneaks behind our corner. Ball goes up in the air. And I'm looking up. I'm like, oh, God, there's no way he doesn't catch this. I mean, okay, hey, we've scored with a minute 40 to go before. We're going to have to do it again. Kind of getting everybody, the offense ready. Honestly, I almost feel like I had time while that ball was in the air to kind of go over all the events of the game that led us to that moment. Quarterback put a decent ball. The kid just had to come back a little bit far. That's a tough catch. It's almost like, you've seen Kyler Huckfelt and a couple of our guys make it, but it's like that Willie Mays over-the-shoulder catch, and it just popped off his shoulder pads. Minute 40 left in the game, and we're able to kneel it out. So, you certainly as a coach, you're like, I wish we would have executed better, at certain points in the game. There's obviously things we want to do better, but, if an SEC team goes into an opponent's, house, it goes into their stadium and it comes out with a big conference win, they'd be pretty damn happy. So I was pretty happy after the game.
Yeah, I imagine so, because it was such a close game. And that last minute 40 or 2 minutes, I want to talk about in particular, because it seems like the second half, it was just kind of flipping the field back and forth. And I felt, watching is like, boy, whoever has a ball last is going to win that game. You called timeout on that fourth down. I believe you were the one, Seckman called timeout. Tell us what are you telling the players at that time? I know you're talking about like the scramble drill and things like that, but what's the messaging to the players, knowing that there's, this literally that one play left in the game, and what's that message?
Yeah, you're getting out there. We're really talking about, hey, do we feel like we need to blitz? Really, and it's fun when you get out there because you can see it in our guys' eyes that they don't get phased. And we'll just say, hey, do your job, and that's kind of execute your position. That they're locked in, they're ready to go. No one's ever, it's really fun because they're so locked in and so intense when they're out there. And that's really how all those timeouts feel. And, it kind of really came down to some timeouts there. We forced Oakville to burn a timeout early on in the fourth quarter. We've gotten an empty formation. Seckman went 5 wide, everybody. I hope you saw it. Did you take a picture? All right. We went 5 wide, empty formation, and, if they wouldn't have called a timeout, we probably score on a post route. We forced them to burn a timeout there. We kind of get that ball with a little less than 4 minutes to go, and we're driving. We kind of get to that fourth down situation, and we kind of had a play that we wanted, and there was some confusion in our huddle. So one of our guys ran off to the sideline. Well, they thought we had 12 out there, so then Oakville calls a timeout. And then they come out of their timeout, and they have 12 on the field, so then they got to call another timeout. Now Oakville's out of timeouts. So that's really huge when it came down to that last minute 40. We had the football. All we had to do, line up in victory and celebrate.
Yeah, certainly a very big game against a very quality opponent. And not only does it feel good, like you said, to just walk away with a road win, this game could have some impact on what happens after the regular season. So wanted to get your thoughts here on, here we go. We got the standings in the conference. So big win. We're on top, followed by Northwest, Webster Groves, Oakville, Hazelwood West, and Parkway South. So wanted to get your thoughts on how the conference is stacking up right now.
Yeah, this game here, especially with Oakville being in both our conference and district, lots of implications. And, Oakville, they finished, I believe, second to us. We've won conference 4 years in a row. They finished third 3 of those years, second 3 times. Last year they finished third behind Northwest. So, they're the team that's always nipping right at our heels when it comes to conference standings. And everybody always kind of gets a little confused. Conference, districts, which is what. And conferences, that's the one that's been the same the last 5 years. These are the teams in the suburban conference. We've been in the suburban orange these past 5 seasons. And these have been the teams that we play every year on our schedule. Certainly with the win Friday night, it kind of really puts us in the driver's seat, as we try to work towards that 5th conference championship. When you look at, the standings, we still have to play Hazelwood West and Parkway South, along with Webster Groves. But it's nice to kind of have that separation, especially with Northwest being the second team and a team we've already beat. So, conferences, that's what everybody always has that question about. This is what's changing next year. Conferences our conference is changing next year. And I'm sure we'll have multiple segments about that as we get to the off season. But, as we're rolling through this season, it's the farewell tour against Northwest, Webster Groves, Hazelwood West, Parkway South. We won't be seeing those teams anymore. Oakville, we're going to play them non-conference in the future still, so we'll still see them. But, that won't have any bearing on who we play in our conference. So that'll kind of be where, we kind of step up a little bit in a competitive balance. We'll explore more of that, when we put a bow tie on this one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So people may be watching like, well, where's Fox in this? So that would be another
Yeah.
non-conference game. So I
Well,
mean,
that would make too much sense, Carl. Stop.
I'll just stay in my lane and in my box here in the upper left-hand corner of the screen.
Call all the St. Louis superintendents, and we'll really get it figured out.
Well, once the conference shakes out, get your thoughts about district. This is the updated standings on district.
Yeah, so our district, that's the one that changes every year. That we are in Class 6, District 1. So Class 6, that's the biggest, those are the largest schools in the state of Missouri. You can't play any bigger class of football than what we're doing here at Seckman. This is just the 40-plus biggest schools in the state, and they chop them into 8 different districts. We're in District 1. And a lot of these districts, they're based off regions. So our district remains pretty similar every season, as you see our friends Jackson there at the top. But this is the one that has that opportunity to change, because actually 2 years ago, Fox was in our district. Our district here now hasn't really changed the last 2 or 3 years. When you see, Northwest and Oakville are both in our conference and district, just because we're all big schools and we're really close to each other. As well as Lindbergh and Jackson. So right now you have the standings up there, and really kind of we're in a really good spot. We're in a position now where if we take care of our business, the last 4 weeks of the season here, we're going to be sitting right where we want to be. When it comes to that first round of the playoffs, those bottom 2 teams you see, the 4 and 5 seed, they'll play each other. So right now that's Oakville and Lindbergh. And then the next week, so we get Halloween off, y'all, hopefully. That's a big deal, especially for all the administrators around here. So then from that, the winner of Oakville Lindbergh, as it sits now, will play Jackson, and then we'll play Northwest. The 2 and 3 seed would play each other if everything remains the same. So the question is, well, can we fall below Northwest or Oakville? If we lose a couple games, and the answer is maybe. We could move. If we lost, let's say Northwest wins out and we lose 2 of these last couple games, and we fall just below Northwest. So Northwest is the 2 seed and we're the 3 seed. Well, since Northwest is right above us and we've already beat Northwest, we'll actually jump them in the standings. So if you have a common opponent and you've beaten them, you'll jump them. So once again, if Oakville were to surpass Northwest and then all of a sudden surpass us and get to 2, and we're stuck at 3, we would then jump Oakville. The issue would then come, right, if we really kind of, crap the bed here towards the end and we drop all the way to that 4 seed, we can't jump both of them. We would only jump the one directly above us. And, why is the 2 seed important? Well, that's that home playoff game. That's what we want. We want that home playoff game. And, right now we're sitting in a good spot for that. So, it really will come down to a lot of the conference stuff and the district stuff too. Week 9, Oakville and Northwest play each other. The winner of that basically will be the 3 seed if everything holds serve, and we would remain the 2 seed.
Yeah, and this graphic just kind of really simplifies things. You win out, like you said, you like your position. That's like a home game, the way it's shaking out. And then, there's some splits or you drop. You're on the road. You're a road warrior for the length of the playoffs, and we like that home field advantage that we have at the Valley. So
and Carl, the last 2 years, we've that one loss has us below Jackson right now, and we've been able to stay above them as they've lost games. They're doing their thing, and they'll probably most likely remain the 1 seed. So if we are able to kind of make our run through the playoffs and get to that district championship game, it ain't going to be at home this year. We're going to the pit, and I'm not getting ahead of myself, but that's just how it could play out.
Sure, sure. And that's always, for folks that do not know, that's always a very, harsh environment for the
Yeah,
visiting team.
it's the best high school football experience in Missouri, and if we get to that point this season to get to experience it, I would be very happy.
Well, no doubt we'll have to just see how the rest of it plays out. But appreciate you breaking down the
Mhm.
scenarios and highlighting where the Jaguars currently stand, because it's a big week here on campus. So it's homecoming week, and we have
Yeah.
a very familiar opponent, some very memorable games, Coach. If I go back into my memory,
Hmm.
we have Pattonville, and then we have them coming to our house this year. So not only is it homecoming, but we have a very quality opponent in Pattonville. Wanted to get your thoughts and have you tell us about their program.
Well, yeah. First off, homecoming week, one of my favorite weeks of the season. There's always a lot of buzz. Thursday night we're gonna have the parade. Everybody's gonna be out. We're gonna have some beautiful, although hot weather. Um, and then the buzz of the assembly and everything going on Friday. Just a little extra buzz following, your homecoming game and the big dance coming up on Saturday and all that stuff. So some coaches view it as a distraction. I just view it as part of what we do, and part of the high school experience. So let's enjoy it. We've talked about, hey, there is all this extra stuff going on this week, and I know there's a dance Saturday night, but it all revolves around what's going to happen 7 p.m. on Friday against as you said, very quality opponent in Pattonville. You see their record 2-3. Their three losses: Fort Zumwalt North, Kirkwood, Lafayette. So those are some serious St. Louis powers. Obviously, Fort Zumwalt North, is out in St. Charles. So three very quality teams that they've lost to. And yeah, they're going to come in here very hungry. We've beaten them the last three times in what have all been very closely contested football games that have gone down to the wire all the way to the fourth quarter. And that's what I expect on this one. If we were hosting a track meet against Pattonville, we'd probably lose. But this is a football game, right? And it comes down to execution, the line of scrimmage, and remaining disciplined. And we know if we're going to beat a quality athletic team like this, that's how we're going to have to play our game.
Yeah, certainly. Look forward to this one with everything going on. Like you said, the parade on Thursday, the big game. Just for those folks maybe not as familiar with the program, how would you maybe compare them to like one of our conference opponents? Like what type of offense they
Yeah, I
run,
mean,
or
yeah, these guys are considered, St. Louis blue blood. You know what I'm saying? Like a blue blooded program, quality. I believe 2019 they were they were in the state championship game, and a very well respected program, and their head coach. I've met him a few times, and we'll get a little bit more familiar as we will be playing in conference with them next year, and you know I'm expecting a good football game on Friday night.
well, we will see everyone at the Valley on Friday. And of course, we'll keep you updated with everything going on our social media channels. Not only can you find this podcast on Facebook and YouTube, but also just updates and important information as we lead up to game time. And so, Coach, here we are more than halfway through the season, and wanted to give you the floor. It's homecoming week. We talked about that, touched upon it, touched upon, obviously the big game that we had last week in Oakville, and how that could determine who we play and where. Wanted to give you the floor as we round out this exciting week here around campus.
Yeah, last night two lower level games out here in the Valley with the freshmen and JV both playing Oakville. Freshmen did a really good job, came out and kind of really got out early, against a quality freshman program, and I forget what the final score was, but they won by two or three touchdowns, and they've taken their record to 3-2. It's definitely been it's been an up and down season with these guys. When it comes to some of their quality opponents, I really would like to see them raise their level of play. When we play at Kirkwood, when we play at Parkway West, a team that we may not match up with perfectly, our execution can't go out the window. It's all a mental thing. And then that's something that honestly, as we work through the off season, I know I'm going to have to work with this group on. And they're a fun group. They're definitely going to be challenging in some aspects, but the future of the program with that class is pretty bright. And when it comes to the JV game, they've always played this Oakville team tight. It was a one-score game last year at the freshman level, a one-score game this year, battle back and forth. We got a lot of guys, that hadn't been getting much varsity time. It was time to get them some reps on the JV. So, a couple sophomores didn't get as much playing time as they normally did, but, we talked about the ebb and flow of the JV team and what it requires. But it was fun to see some of those guys I know have been grinding at practice and working for us out there to get out there on the field and have the opportunity to make plays. And, 2020 coming all the way down to the end, defense stands tall, after a fumble. The quarterback kind of puts the fumble out of his head and then executes a great pass play, and J.J. Jablonski does the rest down the sideline. And, we go up 28-20, kind of as the Oakville has the ball to kind of finish up the game, and Griffin Goad steps up with a huge interception to kind of really seal the deal. So it was fun last night. I asked, you may have noticed a little bit larger presence of coaches on the sideline. I asked, some of my varsity coaches, it's a great opportunity for us to kind of really get hands-on with our younger guys that we do work with at practice and see them in a game, and also kind of help our young coaches out with different things going on. So all around fun night for the program, and it's always fun to get one over Oakville. So
Sure, and Coach, we have an extra minute or two, so I wanted to go a little bit deeper on the JV and freshmen, because I know we haven't talked about them as much on the podcast,
right.
but it sounds like you're very happy with the progression. Getting them on the field as freshmen, the more experience. You have to be happy with the way things are trending, correct?
Yeah, things are trending, well. When it comes to the JV team, okay, look, we're through 5 weeks of the season. We're getting a pretty good idea of what guys can do and what they can't do, where they're good, where they need to get better. So then it starts turning into now, okay, well, where do these guys fit into the picture next year, right? We know what's returning, right? We know what juniors we have. We know which juniors we have starting that we expect to continue to work and get better. We know what juniors are grinding on the JV and who we would expect to step up into that senior year role that we talked about. So now it's really time to say, okay, hey, this sophomore here, where does he actually fit into that picture, going into next year? And sometimes it's not the position that they're actually at. That you kind of see us dabbling a little bit with some guys in different spots, especially last night. And, going to build on that too with a very competitive game versus Pattonville with the JV in a week. And then, they finish up, with 3 JV games that we should feel pretty comfortable in. And that's kind of where we kind of going to get back to getting, those guys that, may not be ready junior year, those senior year type guys, those sophomores that we're kind of identifying right now that need more time. They should expect more time in those last 3 games, I guess. And it's just kind of, you got to really compartmentalize it. And, these decisions, they take time and thought, and coaches are evaluating and thinking. And, it's the same at the varsity level. We had to make a couple changes this week again. And anytime you see somebody go onto the field, guess what has to happen? Somebody has to come off the field. All right. So the excitement one player feels to get the starting role or to get that opportunity, there's somebody feeling the opposite. So then as coaches, we really got to try to keep them motivated, get them to understand why we made the choice. It's not always an easy choice. It's hard. We sit around, hour or two on Sunday mornings, really trying to figure it out and kind of what can put our team in the best situation. And I got onto the varsity, but that's really what we're doing with the JV too. We have to start thinking that way, especially towards the back half of this season and what we know, next season is going to look like. So we're always a couple steps ahead, Carl. The chess pieces are always moving. And yeah, the freshman team, like we said, is progressing. It's just, we talked about a couple weeks ago, why we don't want our freshmen playing 9-10 teams, why we don't want our freshmen playing JV games. I mean, it's the eyeball test. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you see that freshman out there, and then all of a sudden, Oakville's JV walks out there like, oh. And then our JV walks out there, you're like, oh, them freshmen don't have no business being out there. So, that tells me we're doing the right thing. And, if you are the parent of a freshman player, when this season ends, those next 8 months are the most important months of their high school career. That we have to build that solid base, and they're going to look like a little bit more like grown men this time next year. So that's going to be exciting, and I'm sure we'll break all that down in the off season. But that's kind of where our lower levels are sitting, the ebbs and flows and things that are going, and the chess pieces that are being moved for the future of the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. It sounds like the process is working, and those stepping stones and milestones that you and the coaching staff is looking for those players to hit, it translates into wins and playing time on Friday. So it sounds like the process is working. So, Coach, I really appreciate your time today. I know a lot going on around campus, especially with homecoming week. But again, thank you, and roll Jags.
Appreciate it, Carl.
All
I'll
right,
see you
take
out
care.
there.